Hello. Can everybody hear me okay? Oh, that is bright. Okay, hi. So, can we go to my first slide, please? Or second slide, actually? Okay. I am here today in front of you as a community member, as a mom, as an employee, but my first and foremost role that is the most important to me is being a mom. And these are my two children. They're beautiful and amazing, and I love them both. I've got a teenager and I've got a 2-year-old, and this is Rylan and Nevaeh. They brighten my world, and they give me hope every single day, right? And that's why I do what I do, and that's why I've always done what I've done, is to create a better future for our kids. I am also a Tacoma native, born and raised in the city. Currently, I reside in the South End neighborhood. And I'm also a graduate from the University of Washington, Tacoma, with a degree in criminal justice and social work. And as mentioned, I've worked with at-risk youth for over 10 plus years in some capacity through juvenile justice, foster care, the education system, and now in my current role, I am the coordinator of the I'm the coordinator of the Teen Mental Health First Aid Program at the Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department. But on top of all of those roles, I also myself am in recovery from drug and alcohol addiction, and so that plays a major role in why I do what I do. If I can save one youth from having to experience the things that I had to experience or feel less alone than I did at 12 years old, then I've done my job. Right? If I've provided them with skills and tools and a community that cares enough to notice that they're struggling, then I've done my job. So kind of like Dr. Mackey said, it's amazing to be up here, and it's an honor to be here for somebody who was counted out by society for so long, who counted myself out from being a functional member of society, and for someone who's experienced homelessness and trauma and mental health challenges, to stand before you today as somebody who people are listening to and actually hoping to be inspired by, that's pretty cool. So thank you for having me. In my role outside of my current job, I wear many hats, just as we all do, right? I'm a co-founder of something called Sun Alliance. So Sun Alliance is a grassroots community organization that was built in the South End to help the South End. And we help to improve the safety and connection in the neighborhood. We represent the area from South 72nd to South 108th, which is the 512 border. So we expand past Tacoma into the Tacoma unincorporated area. And we also represent from Hosmer to the Pack Ave. And so how Sun Alliance came about is I actually had an opportunity through my day job, which is at the Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department, to facilitate a listening session at Stafford Elementary School, which is located in the South End. And during that opportunity, so they asked me because I live in the area too, right? And I have facilitation skills. And so when I sat there and I listened to what my community was saying, it echoed what I already knew, which was that there's a feeling of unease and unsafety, and that there's no community gathering place for our kids to feel safe and connected, that that our community, despite the passionate, amazing, wonderful people, they needed a leader to help make change, right? They said they would show up, but they needed somebody to lead the effort. And I said to myself, I can do that, right? Because I ultimately want a better place for my kids to grow up. My daughter goes to Clover Park High School, and her bus stop is 4 blocks away. I drove her to school every single day until she could drive. Or not to school, but sorry, to the bus stop. Because there's no way I'm letting her walk down 96th Street on her own. That's just the conditions that we live in right now, in that area. And so anyway, so I went to the administration at the school, and at Stafford Elementary School, and I said, hey, as a community member, can I convene other community members in your space, right? Because we don't have a community center. We don't have a space that is accessible to all except for the schools. And so I asked if we could convene there, and they said absolutely. And so from there, we had a core group of 8 co-founders that built Sun Alliance, and we met every single Wednesday. We brought food for each other. The kids were there. It is a very family-friendly environment. And our first goal was to make sure that we got to know each other, right? And then we sat down and we identified what are our goals. And we came up with our initiatives are to restore, celebrate, and support the community. And so what that means is to restore, it means that we help make families and youth feel safe. We clean up the litter on the sidewalks and the streets. We beautify with greenery. We work to bring more green spaces into the community, bringing art to the community, and making it a really pretty place to be, because if you've gone to the South End anytime recently, it's just not that, right? And then celebrate. So we also wanted to throw cultural block parties. We wanted to spotlight local businesses and uplift the amazing people and all the work that's happening in our community. Because despite the negative connotations that the South End has, or more commonly known as Hosmer, right? Despite all that negative talk around that, we have some really amazing and passionate people in the community. We have such a diverse group of folks who want to do well and are doing good things for the community. They may not be a large organization, but there is a lot of work being done to shine a light back on this community. And we wanted to highlight that. And then support. We want to advocate for our youth by pushing for a community center. That was the biggest push that got me started, right? In that listening session, I continually heard, we want a community center, we want a safe place for people to gather. And I was like, well, why can't we have that, right? We deserve that, our kids deserve that, our families deserve that, so let's make that happen. And so we also have a website that we have a space for our community to find out, like, if in the event of an emergency, right, who do you call, what do you do, because we are overburdening the 911, right, system, and it's not always utilized to the best of, it's not always the best response, right, but we don't know who else to go to. And so I think a lot of folks lean on the police department to improve safety, which, yes, they play a role, but they're not the full, like, they're not the full scope of what safety looks like. Safety looks like connection and belonging, right? So it starts with us first and foremost to create that as neighbors, as community members, as staff members in the area, right? It's our job to build that connection and belonging for our young people and for the rest of us as well in order to build a safe community. So in about a year's time, this is what we accomplished together. So like I said, we met every Wednesday. We identified our goals. We came up with a name, Sun Alliance, which stands for South End Uniting the Neighborhood. And we got to work, right? We got to work. And so I'm not going to go over every single thing that we did, but I am going to go into some detail about a few things. So we have neighborhood cleanups that we've done every year in partnership with Litter 253 on Earth Day. And last year we had 79 volunteers come out and we picked up 91 bags of trash. This year we had 55 volunteers come out and we picked up 94 bags of trash in our little area, right? And I will tell you, if you drive down it, there is still so much trash to be picked up, right? And that's the sad part. But the idea behind this is that, like, a clean community, if we can show that we care about community, then maybe the rest will start to care about the community as well, right? Because when there's a pile of trash, people just load the trash on top of the trash, right? If it looks like the community isn't taken care of, then why would you take care of it, right? That's kind of the mindset that people have. And so then we also adopted the South Ash Open Space site, and that's the second picture here and the third picture here. So this is a trail site that was through the City of Tacoma Open Space Program that has been kind of abandoned for years, but it has some really amazing nature in it, and it's literally one of the only green spaces in the area, right? But it has been overrun by homeless encampments, drug use, prostitution. It was a full prostitution ring a while ago. People's fences have been burned down along the side of it, right? And so we decided as a group we wanted to adopt this space. And so we cleaned it up, and we held our National Night Out event, which is the second picture here. We had over 100 people come to the event. And then I don't know, it's not the most important, we do a lot of work, but with the community center piece, we hosted a second listening session at Stafford, and we presented the proposal that we had written to council members, to elected officials, to Metro Parks. We invited people from Tacoma Police Department. We were strategic in who we invited to that space so that they could hear directly from community about their feelings of safety, and then so we could present this proposal to them to bring the community center to the South End. We worked with Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department to build a report that showed the data of why we needed this in our area. And I convened elected officials, the Metro Parks, some school board members together on a monthly basis to talk about a plan for how do we move this forward, because I only know so much, and that's the thing, is I needed help, right? And so in doing that, we were able to successfully receive $200,000 from the legislature to begin the feasibility study in the South End. And this is what that means, is that's the beginning of this process to build that, and that it's now an official project owned by Metro Parks. Okay. Sorry, the time goes by really fast when you're up here. So I'm trying to speed it up a little bit. So how do you make positive changes in your community, right? The first and foremost thing is to build relationships. I think a lot of us get stuck in, we don't have a title, or we don't hold a certain title, we weren't elected into office, we have this small sphere of influence. How do we make change? I don't know if you're like me, but growing up, I was always like, oh, I want to change the world, right? And I think a lot of us sitting in this room feel the same way, right? And otherwise you wouldn't be here. And so I focused my sights pretty big for a long time, and that's overwhelming because there's so many issues that I want to address that I just can't, right? I can't physically, humanly, possibly do that. And so instead, what I've learned over the last year and a half or 2 years of doing this work is that it starts with us here in our most intimate communities, the places you live and work, right? If we all took the time to implement change in the communities where we live, then eventually we would all change the world, right? So it starts with where you live and where you work, and so building relationships is key too, right? I have been able to move mountains or help move mountains, and this group has moved mountains because of the relationships we built. You have to also leverage the skills and connections that you have in your community, right? So we have amazing people. I'm good at building connection with people. I'm good at relationship building. I'm good at networking. And so I was able to use that skill. But I'm not as great as the organization and the background and building the website and all that, but we have somebody who is. She works in IT, Amanda. She's fantastic, right? So she was able to do a lot of the background work. So you have to build on the skills that you already have in your community, right? And then utilizing existing shared spaces and connecting with your local schools. So schools, we know that not every child goes to school. We know that not every neighbor has a child, right? We know that not every single person has a kid that goes to the school, but that's okay because they have friends in the area. They're neighbors to people who may not have children. But utilizing the school's resources and asking them for help, because they already have a built-in system to reach the masses, right? They already have a way of connecting with parents in the community. So we've been able to market events and ask for help by doing that. And then spending time organizing and building a solid foundation for your group is super important as well, because then people look at you as a little bit more organized, whether you feel it or not, right? And you're like, this is who we are, this is how we're coming, and we need your support. And then some potential barriers that have come up, that continually come up, is time, capacity, and commitment. We all have full-time jobs. I just told you I'm a mom of 2, right? We all, and that's not just me, that we all have these different hats that we wear. And so this isn't something we're getting paid for. This isn't something that's, but it feels like a second job, right? And so knowing what your capacity is and how to work with that is important. We had to readjust this year because my time looks different this year than what it did last year. I don't have the same capacity as I did last year, and that's okay, right? But somebody else is able to step up in certain areas where I had to step down. And we also said yes to everything at first. We were like, yes, we'll be there, yes, we'll be there. And yes, that got our name out there, but also it leads to burnout, right? We had an event every single month last year, pretty much, that we had no time to plan for, and that was exhausting. And so we had to step back this year and say, okay, what do we actually want to represent? What do we actually want to do, right? And then lack of funding. We are not a nonprofit. Almost every grant opportunity that there is, you have to be a 503c. I don't have the capacity to become a nonprofit right now. We can also get a fiscal sponsor, but we have not been able to do that yet. So if there's anybody out here that would like to be our fiscal sponsor, that's my shameless plug. Because obtaining funding is really difficult. So a lot of the funds have come out of our pockets, which is not sustainable, right? Because we're not rich. We don't have it like that, but we have enough to give a little here and there, right? But it costs money to maintain a website. It costs money to buy the supplies for the events. When we did our mural project, we needed to buy paint to do the mural project, right? So these are all things that, that cost money that are hard to apply for when you don't have the nonprofit status. And then the to overcome that, we've partnered with a lot of really amazing organizations that have helped us in certain areas to provide, food for this event, or they provided some manpower for this event, right? And so we've had a lot of amazing volunteers that have stepped up to help us. And then getting people who do not live, work, or visit your neighborhood to understand the need and prioritize your community. We are all human. If we are not driving by it every day, if we do not see it, if we don't know that community, how do we know to care, right? That's just, at the end of the day, that's it. And I think a lot of us lean towards elected officials need to fix the problem. Police departments need to fix the problem. And we can't keep passing the buck to all of them. It starts with us. How do they know what's going on in your community if you don't share that? And in a positive, respectful way, right? Because at the end of the day, if you burn bridges, you've burnt the bridge. And so how do you work with people who may, and some people think that the titles that other folks hold, it makes them feel untouchable, right? And I'm here to tell you, have the hard conversations, right? It's okay to say, I really appreciate what you're doing in my community, and I hear what you're saying, but that's not what my community is feeling. And this is what my community actually needs. And so you can tell me all the data you want, but I'm telling you, this isn't it, right? And then as an elected official or as somebody who holds decision-making power, I really urge you to get to know the people in your community that are not the major organizations, right? Those are important. Those are great and important. So it's not a dig on Green Trek. Like, you guys are amazing. But you do have to get to know these smaller organizations or groups that are doing things, or churches, or like these people that are taking care of our children in different ways. Get to know what they're doing and what their needs are. It's so important. And you just have to keep making noise. At the end of the day, that's the thing, and in a polite way. But that's the thing, is we talk about hope, and the way that I got clean is not by just giving up, right? The way that I have managed through life is not by giving up. I've continued to make noise. I've continued to advocate for what I need, and I will continue to advocate today for what I need for my community, so that my kids can grow up in a safe environment, so that your kids can grow up in a safe environment, because it is my responsibility. At the end of the day, it is all of our responsibility to create a safer place for our children to grow up and thrive in, right? It's not just leaning on the education system and saying teachers need to do all of this. We all have a role to play, and in your own capacity, right? You don't have to get up and save the world today, but do you know your neighbor? Have you said hi to them lately? Do you know who their children are? Do you know if the person across the street is a new divorcee that could use your extra leftovers because they just aren't making dinner? Right? Like, do you know any of that information? And if not, I urge you to figure that out, to talk to people, right? To know whose kids are whose, so that you can continue to look out for them, so that if Mr. Johnson's little boy is on the corner of my street at 10 o'clock at night, I know, one, I can keep an eye on him, but also I know whose kid that is, so that I can make sure he gets back home safe. Right? I don't think that we live in that environment anymore. And if you're sitting in this audience and you're like, my neighborhood is like that, I do have that already. That's amazing, and I love that for you so much. And I'm going to ask you to expand your reach then, right? I'm going to ask you to move outside of your own little sphere and say, okay, because at the end of the day, Tacoma is all of our community, all of Tacoma. And so if your little community is thriving and functioning well, and all the kids have all these opportunities, that's fantastic. But I guarantee you, that's not what's happening over here. And so we need your support over here, right? So looking at it as a whole, starting with your own intimate space, but then also moving out and saying, okay, how can I help the South End? How can I help the East Side, right? If my little area is doing well, what are we doing that's working well? How can we help implement that over here? Where can I help, right? And at the end of the day, a connected community is a safe community. I really wholeheartedly believe that. I wanted a place to belong so badly, right, when I was growing up. I wanted to know that somebody saw me and actually saw me. And I want to create a space where we see our children, where we see what's going on, and we say, instead of hiding from them, like Dr. Mackey was saying, we step up and we say, what do you need? How can I help you? Right? Here's this thing. Here's this person. Here's this connection I can make for you. Instead of walking and turning a blind eye. So it is all of our responsibility to build that connection, to build that sense of belonging, and in doing that for our children, we're doing that for ourselves as well. So I urge you today to think about how can you commit in your own capacity to help bring change in your community, right? That's what I want to leave you with. So thank you.